So, Mr. Beck, welcome. You've been an accountant for 30 years.
Yep.
You've run an accountancy firm for 10.
Yep.
You're now a business advisor, advising lots of companies. You're not tied to any accountancy firm. You can give us a truly honest answer. Do I really need an accountant for my small business?
Definitely. I didn't waste 30 years of my life being an accountant. No, definitely you need an accountant, whether it's just for the basic compliance, getting that right, that's important, but actually the use of their experience and knowledge, just helping you overcome the obstacles of starting and growing a business. A good accountant is vital.
Okay, now I'll let you off with that, Neil. I like you're a good guy, I like you. However, I've got to put the case for you don't need an accountant. I suppose, having been an entrepreneur for a few years, as in some of the frustrations that I've had with accountancy is in terms of, I think probably for a lot of small businesses, just the feeling of being too expensive. Sometimes in terms of a feeling on occasion that every time you ask a question, there's potentially a bill coming back the other way. And even when you feel you've done the right thing in terms of you've spent your year or whatever using software like Xero, you've kept your books up to date, you hand the stuff in, and then what you think is just produce your accounts or whatever. And I know there's more involved in this, but as in you feel you've done a lot of the work yourself, and then the accounts come back, and then there's a bill for potentially sort of a few grand sometimes in terms of that. That can jar a little bit in terms of the way you interact sometimes with accountants, in terms of it doesn't feel easy, in terms of you just want an answer, and there's potentially lots of sort of caveats back, and in terms of the way of interaction is not very easy.
I think the what you've just described there is the traditional, or perhaps a more accurate word would be the old-fashioned approach to accounting. You know, the accountants wait for you to bring in your bag of receipts, or it's now on software, and then they turn it into a set of statutory accounts. They do the corporation tax, and they'll answer any questions you put to them. And that is the old-fashioned compliance thing, and that's why accountants have got a reputation for being boring, because that is the boring part of being an accountant. But if you find an accountant who's got knowledge of your industry and your sector, if you find an accountant who likes working with small, fast-growing, dynamic businesses, then you should be getting much more than that service from your accountant. And in terms of the costs, there shouldn't be any surprises these days. You know, everything should be agreed up front. You should have fixed price agreements. You know exactly what you're getting, and you should be building in to that fixed price, you know, ad hoc advice. And I think that's the difference between a modern accountant who'll be using technology, knows your business, is excited by your business, wants to see you grow and help you grow, because, you know, it's in their interests financially as well to help you grow, because the bigger you get, the bigger the fee.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched on a little bit there at the end of sort of the last bit that's felt a frustration is the sort of the push fee pull thing, in terms of feeling sometimes that it's you that's asking the question, and in terms of you've got to be, there's a bit of reality from an entrepreneur point of view. You're in your business 100% of the time. You think it's the only one in the world, and it's the most important one in the world, and there are other businesses out there the accountant's got to deal with. But I think that there is a bit of that feeling sometimes of you're always asking the question, in terms of there's sometimes not a lot just pushing, coming back in terms of, I didn't think about this, I'm busy doing lots of other things. Accountants come to me with some stuff. It doesn't feel sometimes from an entrepreneur's perspective that necessarily comes, but as you say, in terms of it's depending whether you got the right one or not.
Yeah, and I think again it's that having an interest in your business, having an interest in the sector, having an interest in the fact that it's startups and new business and stuff, and that you know, they all have their quirks, and there is a different mindset required to be a good advisor to people like that. And I think that aspect of push and pull is very important in finding the right advisor. You know, you don't want someone who will answer the questions you give and give you a perfect answer, because as an entrepreneur and someone starting out, you don't necessarily know what questions you should be asking, and so you want an advisor who has helped 100 businesses in your or more in your set of circumstances and says, these are the things that might trip you up. You need to watch out for this. You need to watch out for that. And that experience, that's what you're paying for. You're not buying his time. You know, yes, they all work on hourly rates and how long have I spent and all that sort of stuff. But you know, to some extent, you're buying that experience. And I think the only thing I would say to give the accountant's view is that these days, people don't seem to want to pay for professional advice. They are, you know, well, my mate's already done it, I'll just copy his, or they'll use Google, or they'll do those sorts of things. And so there is a little bit of a trade-off. You know, if you're going to have a good accountant who's got lots of experience and is going to help you, you know, go very much, you know, they're going to accelerate your growth by being able to identify the hurdles, the problems you're going to have, help you get over them and through so that you're growing faster. You've got to be prepared to pay the guy or lady to do that work and share that experience. Free. It's not free, no. And you know, and there is a lot of times now you see people just using documents they found online or a mate's documents, you know, find and replace in Word, and off they go, and they've no idea whether it's appropriate, and actually just talking to a good advisor who's got experience in what you're trying to do will save you so much time and effort.
Yeah.
And you should repay whatever you're paying them, you should get it back in spades, to be honest.
I think that, to be fair to accountants, which I obviously rarely like to be, but in terms of, that's one of the biggest learnings, I think, for me, from an entrepreneur's point of view, of just trying to do too much, in terms of, you want to know obviously everything about your business, what's going in and out the door, but there's a bit of, after a while, of, James, why am I spending time here on accountancy things, trying to work out this tax, that tax, or whatever, and forget there's a cost to my time as well, in terms of, if I'm spending time trying to work out how much tax I'm going to pay, or whether this is a write-off or that a write-off, when you would know the answer in a few seconds, in terms of, I've got to balance my cost of that. And I think from an entrepreneur's point of view, the other key thing is energy, and that's something that I don't think you realise until you've done it, as energy is the most valuable commodity, I think, that you've got. And in terms of, if you're not spending that energy in the right things, you don't want bills. No one does, particularly when you're getting started. You do not want a bill. However, that energy, if you're spending your time doing stuff that you're just not trained to do, that energy level is going to do, and it'll cost you money more than you pay that accountant in the long run.
Absolutely. The more creative the sector is that you're in, I think even more important to get an accountant or bookkeeper, you know, someone to do the mundane processing things. Yes, people are bright, they can learn how to do that, and Xero and QuickBooks and stuff have all made that easier. But if it's not your bag, it does, you know, you can't just be doing the books and then turn and go, right, I'm now going to do something creative. You know, there will be a time lag in getting that energy and that mindset back to being something other than a bookkeeper. Yeah. And I say, so there's many aspects to what an accountant can do. As I say, there's the more mundane, if you like, processing, keeping the records, making sure you're up to date with your VAT or your payroll and all those sorts of things. And, you know, and they're important, you know, they're legal, they're statutory requirements, all that sort of stuff. But then, as I say, the other aspect is having someone, you know, almost as part of your management team, someone that you can pick up the phone to and say, I'm thinking of doing this, what are the things, you know, anything I'm obvious I should be aware of that I might, you know, that you've seen other people fall over when they've tried to do these things.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, in terms of, you start and you think this is just a cost, in terms of, I'm getting nothing out of this beyond just handing money over. However, if you do find the right one, they can become an extended part of that team, and I think that's
absolutely. And I think, again, we mentioned cost. If you this day and age, fixed price accounting, and yes, you can get accountants who'll say, right, well, we'll do the accounts, we'll do this, and anything else you ask is on an hourly rate. But that's becoming less and less. It is becoming all inclusive. You know, that the accountant is effectively a member of your team, and in the same way that you're going to pay someone a salary and they get the same every month, however busy or otherwise they might be, in my opinion, good accountants these days are saying, right, here's the package of services that we can put together for your business. We work with 100 other people very similar to you, so we know you need your accounts doing, you need your payroll, you need all that stuff. That we need that. We can give you a price for that. On top of that, on average, we know you're going to want to call us this many times, have a few ad hoc meetings. There's going to be advice. We'll build that in. There's the monthly standing order. You pay us as if we're a member of staff. You pick up the phone, you ask us anything you need. And if you're using the accountants more than they expected, at the end of the year, they'll be able to demonstrate you've used us a load more. Therefore, you're at, the monthly fees going up, or you need to change how you work with people. And that, for me, that's how good advisors are operating these days. They're not just saying, at the end of the year, here's the bill for how many hours you've used, and no one knows what that's going to be in advance. That's how professional services was back in the 80s, but that's a long time ago.
Well, it should be back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the thing. If you come across, I think the advice I would give myself going back and I was lucky in terms of knew you were part of the business in terms of the account support we got was there from the beginning. But I think that is take some time to find the right one in terms of don't just go, okay, ask other entrepreneurs or whatever what they use, but if it's not there, just try someone else in terms of treat it like retail almost in terms of I don't like that, whatever cereal bar, no, try another one in terms of don't automatically think it's something that's got to be done, get it done and move on. Take some time to find the right one because it will pay it back later on.
Absolutely. I think if you know what you're looking for, you can explain that. So when you meet someone, say, this is how I want it to work. What I've just said is, right, I want a fixed monthly price and I want to be able to contact you and ask questions, whatever. Yes, if there's some significant project that comes up, then it'll be obvious to both sides of the agreement, and there'll be perhaps extra fees needing for that. But if you explain to an account this is how we do, and they turn and say, "Oh, that's not how we operate," we'll fix the fee for doing the end of year. But no, if you pick up the phone to me, I'm £200 an hour, and the clock starts. Yeah, move on, find someone else.
Yeah.
Don't. It's a two-way street. You can't go into it and then you say, "Well, that's not what I wanted." If you were buying a car or anything like that, you're looking for the features and benefits that suit you. And accountants, lawyers, whatever, that's all the same.
Yeah, and I think that's it's for an entrepreneur. Don't be afraid to say thanks very much, but I'm going to go somewhere else. I think there's a bit of particularly if you're new to entrepreneurship and getting started, there might be a feeling of, geez, they might know more than me or whatever. But just treat it like anything else. Retail wise, doesn't feel right for you. Move on.
And I think the other thing is linked to that is don't buy on price, because you do get what you pay for. And if the guy's much cheaper than someone else, it's because he's not expecting to do as much. It probably doesn't mean he's not as good. He'll be just as qualified, and technically he'll be just as competent, but he's not expecting to do as much. That's why he's cheaper. And so therefore, if you do want to use him in the way that I've just described, he's going to want to charge more, because he's going to say, well, I thought it was only going to take me 10 hours at the end of the year, and you're ringing me up every month.
Yeah.
And that's the other side of it is with everything these days, you shouldn't be buying on price.
And the other thing is sector experience in terms of, an accountant that knows your sector will know what's ahead for you versus stuff, because you don't know in terms of you've done your business plan. Hopefully there's another video we're doing on that which will talk about business plans, but as in an accountant who knows your sector will know stuff you don't in terms of
the sector and where you are in the life cycle of a business. That's what you're looking for.
Whether you're raising money or whether you're very early stage before that.
Yes, you say if you're a startup, what are the things that might be unique? As you say, raising money, creating business plans, introducing share options and reward schemes for attracting talent because you can't afford to pay them. Perhaps lots of cash, so you've got to find some innovative way to do that. And you want someone who's worked with businesses at that point in their life cycle. And yes, sector experience is another huge thing. Whether you're in legal services, someone who has some awareness of what the regulations are around you. If you're in hospitality, someone who understands what sort of return should you be getting on this, what margins are applicable, so that they can be looking at saying, hang on, your wage percentage is much higher than someone else's. Let's have a look at that. Let's see how we can help you reduce some costs or work differently to make the business more profitable, more efficient.
And that sort of comes out to the sort of last question of when you think you should probably take on an account. I think certainly I'm agreed as an entrepreneur, and I know you are naturally in terms of as an accountant, that the answer to the question, do you really need an accountant for your small, is yes, with the caveats of finding the right one based on sector, based on stage of business that you are, and based on personality fit. In terms of when, in your experience, would you say in terms of is the best time to look at?
I think day one, their experience should be of benefit to someone starting out on day one, whether that is giving you some feedback on whether your business has, it makes sense, what you're planning on doing. I think whether you're going to operate through a limited company or as a sole trader or as a partnership, they'll be able to give you input on day one. Doesn't mean that you necessarily have to agree a fee for the next 12 months. You might come in and say, right, I just need someone to help me do this. How much will that cost? And you might be negotiating quarterly fees as the business grows and expands and whatever. But again, whether it needs to be an accountant, that's a technical term, I suppose, a legal term as to someone who's in that space. But just someone with good commercial business advice should be able to give you some value very, very early on, as I say, day one, even before day one, to give you some feedback as to whether your business idea has legs in the first place.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost you anything necessarily in terms of to start talking to accountants from very early, in terms of you can talk to them, they say, okay, this will be a few grand for the, and then you go, right, okay, you're not for me, in terms of it's not cost you anything beyond a bit of time, but as in if there's value there, the earlier you get that value, obviously at a price you can afford to start with, can only be a good thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the sooner you surround yourselves with people that you that have experience, that for me is the big thing. That's being able to accelerate through those first hurdles and issues and problems that all new startup growing businesses experience.
Yeah,
is invaluable.
I think that's the biggest learning for me has been that, in terms of you're excited when you get started or whatever, but just the amount of energy I wasted to begin with, just in stuff that just didn't matter. No, it doesn't matter, that's the wrong phrase, but as in wasn't my job, in terms of I was far better. Job is to get sales in the door, get cash flow going, and get stuff working in terms of marketing, stuff like that, to get the business running. Knowing how all details of tax work, etc., is just not something I should be spending my time on.
No, and I think something else to say on that point is a lot of people say, well, I don't want to spend a lot of money on accounting to begin with. And I'm a great believer in there's no point having a great system of accounting if you haven't got anything to count. So yes, as the entrepreneur, you should be focusing on growing and building your business. And if you are 100% confident it's going to hit the ground running and be hugely successful straight away, you may want to invest earlier on with accountants or others to build the back office system that's going to capture all the data that is legally required and also will help you with your decision making. But an alternative would be, well, I don't know how it's going to be. I'm just going to go out there and try and build the business. And once I've proved it and once I've got stuff to count, then I'm going to invest money in creating the system that will capture all of that. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but again, be aware that it will cost you more money if there's a whole mess that has to be sorted out. But that would be a conscious decision. You're going to be spending money after you've proved that it works and it's okay, rather than, I've got a pot of money to start my business, I'm going to spend 25% on it, creating a back office system for something that doesn't actually exist
Which
yet.
is not a bad place to be, in terms of, but as long as you accept it later on, in terms of what is it, 20% of businesses fail within the first year, 50% within 3 years, as in if you get going and get through those periods, and then you've got sales coming in and money coming in, and you've got to spend a bit more on accountancy to sort stuff out that you historically could have done, that's not necessarily a bad thing because the business is working. However, you've got to accept that it will cost more.
Yeah, it's a commercial decision. There'll be lots of commercial decisions that people are going to have to take that will have different consequences to cost, returns, and whatever. And that's another one of them. How, I early in the process get advice and get use of an accountant's experience, but I wouldn't say necessarily it would be a good use of the pot of the seed capital you've got to start and grow a business, to spend too much of that on having this perfect back office system until you've proven that you need a back office system, or what system do you need that, because a lot of small businesses these days will be, pivoting and stuff, and maybe the systems you've put in place, the processes you have, won't be relevant or efficient for what you end up doing 6 months later.
Yeah. So I think the unfortunate conclusion we've come to, not to offend accountants out there, is yes, I think from an entrepreneur's point of view, you do need an accountant to help your sort of small business. But as I say, the key things are find the right one. Take your time about that. Just make sure you find the right one. They will add value. It will cost, but they will add value. I hope you found that useful. We've got lots of other videos giving you tips and guidance on how to get your basics of business right from day one. Give us some comments below. Let us know what you think. Give us a subscribe, and we'll catch you in some other of our videos.